Hello my soccer universe, I'm Roland and this is Football Talk. The club season is back and yes, we already had a cup round last week, but the Austrian Bundesliga starts this Friday evening and I decided to do a little preview of the Austrian Bundesliga as it's the league that together with Serie A I am actually watching most because my favorite team LASK is playing in it, and it is to the point where I will probably talk on Football Talk a little bit about the Austrian Bundesliga, but I made now another spin-off podcast in German where I give my thoughts on the Austrian Bundesliga. So if you speak German and understand my Austrian dialect, I would invite you to hop over and watch. But we'll keep this preview relatively short. I don't want to make this podcast too long, but we'll get to the main points and predictions, which teams are in there, coaching changes, all the good stuff that I usually do in these previews. And I also know that the next few seasons are also getting underway next week, so I have to probably shoot a few previews, but they will not be as detailed as the Austrian preview. And then I'm on vacation, and then the big leagues will get going mid of August while I'm on vacation. So I don't know how I'm gonna handle this. We'll see. Maybe I'll shoot something on vacation, but it will not be in my studio, so most likely this will be something maybe just audio. But let's see. I'm also want to try that this is the first podcast video where I'm actually putting some graphics in there. The graphics that I've been using so far. I want to try this now in the new software that I'm using. It will not be as animated as it was before. This will come. Bear with me on that one, but I hope it will look decent overall. Any case, I would say let's get started. Austrian Bundesliga, we have again 12 teams. One team got relegated last season, which was Austria Klagenfurt, is replaced with SV Ried. So we have 3 teams from Upper Austria this time in the Austrian Bundesliga, which is quite dense. 2 teams from Linz plus from Ried, so plenty of derbies happening there. I know that LASK has fierce rivalries with both of these teams. I actually don't know what the rivalry between Blau-Weiß and Ried is. However, given that people in Ried see themselves as the outsiders that fight against the capital, a little bit like Asterix, I can only imagine that they're also not too much liking each other. And I've also said it before, I have 2 colleagues that are fans exactly of these 2 teams, so it will be quite spicy in my office as well. I'm of course the lone LASK representative, although I'm working on getting other people turned around on my side of things, but it's all in good jest. In any case, so Ried is back. We lose probably the prettiest stadium in Austria. However, it never looks good when it isn't full. We gain in Ried a stadium that may not look anything super special, but it is well sized for the city and is usually very well visited. So I think we will see another increase in actual attendance there as well. We have, of course, Sturm Graz being the defending champions, Red Bull Salzburg after a rotten season making it into second place, so kind of salvaging it that as well. Austria Vienna finished in third place. We're thinking about a championship for a moment, and then it didn't quite work. There was quite some disappointment at the end of the season. Wolfsburg finishing in fourth only. However, would they have scored against Sturm Graz one more goal, they would have been champions because Austria Vienna were not winning. So Austria Vienna were also not too far away from becoming champions. Rapid, one of the disappointments of the season, at least salvaged the European spot. Blau-Weiß, sensational season. Yes, they ended up in 6th, but it was still a very sensational season. LASK only in 7th. I would still say they were the biggest disappointment of the season because Europe was the clear goal, a group phase even, and they failed spectacularly. And everything that could go wrong in this season actually went wrong. First, you didn't qualify for the top 6. Then you actually got around together, but you were eliminated in the cup, which was your best chance of securing a European group phase, at least in the qualification spots. Unnecessarily so against Wolfsburg, who ended up winning the cup. The first time that they won the cup in a cup final against Hartberg. So this was a huge chance for LASK for some silverware. Unfortunately, it did not happen. And then you had the playoff. You had a 2-goal advantage against Rapid from the first leg, and you threw it away again. And so it just fit perfectly to the season. Given, and we'll talk about coaches, there is a complete reset. I honestly think it's probably not too bad to not having to play in Europe. Hartberg, decent season. They are rebuilding their stadium, so they have to play actually the first few games close to Vienna, and the Bundesliga had actually that they only have 3 home games, or at most 4 in the first 11 to kind of help them with that. So that will also a little bit slant the table, I would think. Then we have WSG Tirol, who are now talking to finally go back to Wattens. However, for now, they're playing still in the Tivoli in front of absolutely nobody. GRK, the other team from Graz, a very traditional team, the oldest team theoretically that is not from Vienna, so they have quite some history. However, they also have only one championship in their 102nd year of existence. So yeah, they play in the same stadium, of course, as Sturm Graz, and that has caused some troubles. Altach have a new logo. Honestly, it's not a great logo, but it's their traditional logo. I guess the fans will like it. I personally find the logo relatively meh, but okay. If the fans are happy, I guess this is fine. And that rounds out the Bundesliga. Coaching-wise, there are 3 coaches that have started the last season that are also starting this season. And that is Stefan Helm at Austria Vienna, that is Didi Kübauer at Wolfsburg, and that is Philipp Semlich at WSG, and also Maxim Senft at Ried. He started already 2 years ago. He just hang on. Everyone else came in during the last season or was replaced ahead of the season. Those 3 are, of course, Peter Stöger at Rapid. A major appointment. Peter Stöger has, of course, quite some clout. He was a TV expert. He was actually associated more with Austria Vienna. That he is now at Rapid caused quite some stir. It's not quite sure. I mean, he is probably one of the more successful coaches within Austria. I'm just not sure how well it will work for Rapid. We have Mitja Moritz taking over from Gerald Scheiblener, who went in the summer to Grasshopper Club at Blau-Weiß Linz. So the Scheiblener era ends after 4 years. That may have some major implications. And then, of course, the wild card, Joao Sacramento. He was an assistant coach for Jose Mourinho at Spurs. He was also at Roma, I think, for Jose Mourinho there, at least half a year. And then he also was for none other than Gaultier when he was at PSG, working with Messi. He was the assistant coach there. He was now at Al Duhail in Qatar as well as assistant coach. It's his first appointment as a head coach. I think it's quite risky, but if it works, and I have to say, the general feeling among LASK fans when you hear him talk, it's very positive. It's very encouraging what's going on there. Now, they have to confirm this on the field, but what I hear so far, I'm probably more optimistic than I should be. So those are the big 3 coaching hires. Everyone else basically had the same job at the end of the season, but was hired during the last season. And it's exactly these hires by Peter Stöger and Joao Sacramento that I think have the most eyes on them. Also, Thomas Letsch, he came in at Red Bull Salzburg relatively late in the game. They have the Club World Cup. How will that help them? And Jürgen Säumel started great when he took over from Chris Ilzer, who went to Hoffenheim. Then there was a little plateau in there, but in the end they got hot again, so he got the championship. Has to be seen how they will go going forward. I don't want to comment too much on transfers because it's really hard to tell. Most of the players that come in and out are mostly no-names. I mean, if I just look at LASK, yes, I saw some that I really like, but honestly, I couldn't tell you if this was a good signing or not. So we will have to see. I want to now tell you what my model says. How will the season end? We will first start with the regular season. Red Bull Salzburg have to be considered the big favorites, ahead of Sturm Graz, the defending champions. Then Rapid and Austria relatively close, and Wolfsburg and LASK relatively close. Honestly, squad-wise, I think Wolfsburg have a really, really good squad. However, it's probably too thin to battle in the league and in Europe, so it will depend. They have now to play against PAOK. If they get over that hurdle, they're already in a group stage. So we have to see what Wolfsburg will and can do. If they do play in Europe, then I can see them falling a little bit off. If they're not, then I think they will be in the mix up there. They're a very, very well-coached team. For me, the biggest wild card, yes, Rapid is a little bit of an unknown quantity, although what I've seen now in Europe, that looked good. What I saw in the Cup maybe not so much. So we have to see. And of course, LASK. No one can tell you what LASK is all about. And there's again some noise beside the field as well, which I will quickly address when we'll talk about the upcoming round. So there's a little bit some negative tension there too. Personally, if I'm realistic, I would say yes, LASK will be between the 5th and 6th spot. However, gut feeling wise, and probably it's the optimism that's in me, I actually think we will finish ahead of Rapid. I think that in the end, Peter Stöger will not work out that much. But, I might be completely wrong. But I can't see LASK without any European commitments, and it will very much depend. How many teams will the league get into the European group phases? And we would need as many as possible because we are on the edge of losing a 5th starter. So we need to get them in the group phase, but that might come as collateral damage for some of these teams. So we gotta say, I have a gut feeling that LASK will finish ahead of Rapid. I wanna broaden it a little bit. We will probably finish ahead of one of the Vienna teams. And if also because in the group phase we might finish ahead of them too. So I'm optimistic in that one. Of course, it might go all wrong again. So I think that for the bottom 6, the prediction for the regular season is relatively accurate. I would potentially say that Altach should be a little bit lower, but you see, it's a 4-way race. These 4 teams will battle against relegation. Blau-Weiß and Hartberg should not have anything to do with it. On the other side, we have the stadium situation in Hartberg where they have to play a few games away from home. And if we then look into the prediction for the full season, so with the playoff, it doesn't change much, to be honest. But I'm saying the same thing. Salzburg is a big favorite. To me, yes, while it says here WSG Tirol on the very bottom, to me, if you ask, the big favorite to be relegated is Altach. They have been escaping over and over again. And Altach, a little bit like WSG Tirol, they are 2 teams that have an idea that is not befitting of a team that is fighting against relegation. And WSG Tirol actually, I think, have a better structure there. With Altach, I'm never so sure. I think Altach is always trying to be more than they are. And I think this might eventually cost them. I could see GRK surviving. I think Blau-Weiß Linz as well. I think Ried, I think, is overlooked at this moment. They probably suffer from being a promoted team. But, they kept most of the team that got promoted together. And that's usually a good sign. And they have a few additions. So let's see. I actually, while I'm no fan of theirs when it comes on the pitch, but having derbies is always something nice. So actually would hope that both teams from up Austria will stay in. LASK, I would expect to stay in anyway. So those are my thoughts on the Austrian Bundesliga. The way I think that the league might be going, if I would be asked personally, I might switch around a little bit. But I think the predictions that are based on the ELO model plus the odds ahead of the season are relatively accurate. I also gotta say that. We're starting with a big game. LASK hosting Sturm Graz. I mean, it doesn't get much better. You have one of the nicest stadiums hosting the opening game of the season. The champions are coming to Linz. I think if this would have been the opener in the past 2 years, this would have been always first against third or second against third. So absolute great stuff. This time around, finished only in 7th, but it's still a really, really big match between really 2 big fan bases. However, there's still the problems between the club leadership and the organized fan base. There's still the boycott up there. To be honest, I'm a little bit tired of the whole thing. It's too little. Let's try to understand each other. It's too much. We have been wronged and it comes from both sides. The one thing I have to say, there have been statements from both sides released this week. When I look at the statements from a club, it always looks that they're a little bit more mature. And I think the larger fan base and also the sponsors are not quite on board what the active fan clubs are demanding. And, going into negotiations demanding something probably not good. On the other side, I know they have been promised many things. And so, the promises were never kept. And the team or the club itself has shown little respect for fans in general. I have to say, ticket pricing, if you just want to buy a single ticket, not great. If you have a season ticket, as I do, they're actually really reasonably priced. And that's probably the model that they want to have. In any case, I hope a resolution can be found, and I will talk more about this on my LASK channel, Mein LASK Universum in German. But it is an annoying situation, and I think the party that loses the most is actually the team. And if you're a fan of a team, I know this boycott is not against the team, but in the end, it does not help the team, it actually will hurt the team. And this is something that they have to realize. But yeah, if you speak German, I'll say probably more. I've already said a lot on the second episode. I will probably say a little bit more on the third episode if I get to it tomorrow. Let's look at the other 5 games. We have Tirol against Hartberg. That's kind of a lower level meeting than Wolfsburg have to, because he has huge favorites over Altach. Ried hosts Salzburg in their opening game. Salzburg always go in the first round to a promoted team. Also interesting. Then 2 teams that have been ousted from the cup. The only 2 Bundesliga teams, GRK and Austria Vienna, meet. And then Rapid against Blau-Weiß Linz should be one-sided, but have in mind, both Austria Vienna and Rapid have now played on Thursday evening European Cup games. They won easily. Austria Vienna had to travel. They have to travel more. Rapid at least could play at home. And Blau-Weiß Linz have been the thorn in their side in the past season. So this is not an easy game, I gotta say. But it will be interesting for sure. In any case, please let me know what you think about the Austrian Bundesliga this season. Who will become champions? Who will go down? How do you see this season pan out? Please drop a comment below, either on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Also, I would ask you, please subscribe to both the YouTube channel as well as the podcast app, because it would really help this podcast to reach the next level. I will talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye!